Okay.
Right.
I have a question of everyone. Since the virus thing in March hit, we've been eating strictly at home. I think I've had 2 restaurant meals since the middle of March, and I've been losing quite a bit of weight and doing nothing. I'm just curious if that's true of you, any of you. It's really odd. I guess it's just how it is fattening. I don't know.
Well, it's challenging, but a lot of people are out and about, doing things, walking in parks around their neighborhood and ordering out. So we're sort of in the process of getting back to to a little bit of restauranting and yeah.
My challenge is, if living here at Meadowood, they are providing us free of charge a second meal. And so instead of losing the 5 pounds I was on track to lose before this thing started, I gained another 5 pounds.
Okay, welcome Clint Baugh. Okay, well, why don't we get started? I mean, that's a good thing to discuss on Facebook, Steve, if you want to open that. That would be a great discussion, how people
Okay,
are doing.
thanks. Okay, thanks.
I think it's portions. Portions. We eat more when we, the restaurants give you a portion and you can't have any more than that.
My problem
Right.
is snacks.
I just think you need to drink more and then you'll be fine.
Drink more.
Charlotte,
Okay.
okay, I'll stop babbling. I ate a whole pint of ice cream yesterday, okay?
Wow.
So welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's celebration of service for May 26, 2020. I'm the current club president, Aaron Davis, and it is just wonderful to see everyone here. We have at least 48 participants thus far. As we remember Memorial Day and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, we'll start with the pledge. And I'll lead this time once the flag unfurls. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The reflection is omitted this week to make room for a short business meeting at the end of today's celebration of service. This is where Kyla will present the board's plan for a sustainable Rotary Club future. So please stay around for that. And if anyone's here from another club or otherwise curious about it, you're welcome. I'd like to acknowledge our greeters today, Jim Bright, Michael Shermis, Ashley Sullivan, Katie Beck, and our production supervisor, executive producer, Ellen Barker. Roundabout reporter for May is the incomparable Glenda Murray. And also, thank you for Ellen for the use of this Zoom account and your expertise. So, are there guests remaining to be introduced? Jim Bright.
Well, we're pleased to have with us today, back from the Rotary Club of Evansville, Randy Wheeler, our district secretary. Also joining us is our former fellow Bloomington Rotarian, Raj Hidawi, who's joining us from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Rotary alum, Jessica True, who's joining us today from Mission, Kansas. And Jessica, as you may remember, just received a master's degree in opera from the University of Kansas. So welcome everybody. Am I missing any visiting Rotarians or Rotary family members? Okay, again, welcome.
Ashley.
And welcome. So did we miss anyone?
Why can't I get this off of there?
Owen or Ashley, or is Katie here?
Katie's not here. We have Ron Smith joining us. He was
Yes.
earlier, but welcome.
Thank you.
And
Welcome, Ron.
everyone else appears to be a part of our group, but maybe not always see them. So really glad to see Judith DeMuth here today. And I think that's everyone. Of course, happy to
Okay.
see everyone.
My guest, if he shows up, will be Łukasz Przybysz from Warsaw, but he is teaching till 6 o'clock Central European time and wasn't sure if he could make it.
Okay, well, we love having international visitors, so at least one a week would be great. Hope he is able to make it. So welcome everyone to the Bloomington Rotary Club, Bloomington, Indiana. It's wonderful to have you here. We have, first we pay attention to the Rotary family. We have some birthdays this week. Tina Swanson on the 24th, and District Governor Santana Naidu, May 29th. So if you know him, you might want to drop him a line. It's been an interesting year for a district governor. And he's wonderful, wonderful district governor. Membership anniversaries this week. We have Judy Lucas, 23 years, don't see her much, but someone we do see a lot. And Joy Harder, celebrating 14 years in Rotary. Welcome. Congratulations, Joy.
Wow, who knew? That's cool. Thank you, Aaron.
This stuff just happens, right? Hang around long enough, it happens every year. Our Rotarians in the news, we'll let you just read your own newspaper for a while. It doesn't take very long, I hear. Although Gus was photoed, he doesn't want to. Yeah, I think you all saw that on Sunday. The Rotary Action updates, you know, after the program today, we'll be talking about our plan for moving successfully into the future. But I also want to announce the creation of a fund within the club to encourage diversity. That was inspired by Raj Hadawi, and the board picked it up unanimously. And we'll see how it unfolds over time under Ashley's term, Ashley's leadership. We have a couple of donations for this fund already, and the board will be developing a plan. So anyone who'd like to contribute to this, I have, and a couple of others have said that they will, to the Diversity and Engagement Fund. Our next Rotary Zoom Cafe will be an opportunity to socialize again on Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. The past week we had a great time. It was a smaller group, but we really had a blast, you know, getting to know each other better. Now, looking into the future, you won't want to miss our unique club assembly that we're planning with Michael Shermis's help on June 16th. We're going to have small group gatherings in Zoom breakout rooms. So if you haven't experienced a Zoom breakout room, we'll be giving that a try. Also, please plan to attend our celebration of service on July 7th, which will celebrate the end of my year as president, which is something to celebrate, and the beginning of Ashley Sullivan's year of Rotary opening opportunities, which is a whole lot to celebrate, and I'm looking forward to that. Do we have happy dollars? What are you happy about? Guests included. Lynn?
I'm happy that my wonderful gym is reopening on Monday under very, very, very strict guidelines, and I cannot wait to get back there. Zoom classes are great, but they're not the same. And I'm excited that I'm going to get to see my little grandson this Saturday. A 2-week, what do we call those things?
Quarantine.
Quarantine when a family member.
Oh, all right. And
I'm
Alan,
happy. I'm happy because I finally got a haircut today. Woo-hoo!
okay. And Alan has an
So
announcement.
I'll go ahead and just first of all say I'm very happy that the vortex of the Bloomington Early Music Festival has now passed my basement, and I feel very relieved and happy that it was as successful as it was. But I'm also very, very happy to announce that we now have a Bloomington Rotary YouTube page. And this morning I loaded up about 10 of our meetings, past meetings, and I'm gonna, in the chat box, I'm gonna be sending you the URL. Now this is very important because if all of you go in and subscribe, we will be able to have our own URL, which means that we would have our own address on YouTube. So if you could all go in and subscribe, that would be fabulous.
Hey,
Hey, who else? Thank you, Alan. Communications Committee. Well done.
Right.
Okay,
Jim
anyone
Sims.
else? Thanks,
Hello,
Jim.
am I on?
Yes.
This is for Happy Dollars. First of all, I try to always be happy. The next thing, I'm happy that my wife is such a wonderful cook. So over this pandemic, obviously, I've picked up, I won't say how much. And I do believe in everything in moderation. I just need discipline to follow that. But what I'm most happy for was the initiative that Dr. Hadawi started on the diversity fund for our club. And I'd like to offer a donation of $100 to that account so we can move forward and make this a bigger and better club going on into the future. So thank you all.
all right, Jim. Yeah, Jim. What a guy.
Thank you, Jim. I also want to recognize that Martha Wales is here and Sandy Keller. Well, I already mentioned Wendell. Good to see you, Wendell. Okay.
I got one. I don't want to get in a bidding war, but I also would like to offer a $100 donation to the diversity fund that Raj has set up. Thank you so much, Raj, for getting that started. Thanks.
And I'm on board with that too. I've got 100.
Me too.
I'm matching that as well.
Wonderful.
I've already sent my check.
And me. I think we're up to $500.
Oh, that's I think where Raj started us. So thank you. Thank you. It's important, and it's such an honor to be president at a time when we're doing this. So thank you. Now I would like to introduce Lynn Schwartzberg, who will in turn introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, Aaron. Wow. Well, Jillian Kinsey really needs an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and give her one anyway. She is the Associate Director at the Center for Post-Secondary Research and the National Survey of Student Engagement Institute at Indiana University Bloomington School of Ed. She conducts research and leads project activities on effective use of student engagement data to improve educational quality, and serves as a senior scholar with National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment Project. She co-authored numerous publications and is co-editor of multiple academic journals. She was honored with a Student Choice Award for Outstanding Faculty at IU in 2001, received the Robert J. Menges Honored Presentation by the Professional Organization Development Network in 2005 and 2011, and in 2014 was named Senior Scholar by the American College Personnel Association. She has earned her PhD from IU in higher education with a minor in women's studies. She has also been a researcher and administrator in academic and student affairs at Miami University and Case Western Reserve University. Her scholarly interests include the assessment of student engagement, how colleges use data to improve student and academic affairs partnerships, and the impact of programs and practices to support student success, as well as first-year student development, teaching and learning in college, access to and equity, and women in underrepresented fields. On a personal note, Jillian is one of my dearest friends. She is a skilled ice skater, loves cats, gardening, good food, and great wine, and yoga and walking. So welcome to Jillian Kinsey.
Thank you, Lynn. That's a lovely introduction. I really appreciate it. I like the more personal introduction, so thank you for. Thank you very much. Well, and it's lovely to see everyone today. I'm so glad you're all healthy and well enough to be attending this Zoom meeting, which is no substitute for in-person contact. So I regret that my first Rotary encounter is not in person. So it is with deep regret that we're not meeting when we originally were supposed to, actually in March, when I was going to join you. So but I'm really glad that we could create this, I guess, a substitution experience. So the best we can do under the circumstances. And I'm gonna start, I hope, sharing my screen now. So we'll see here in a second. And I have assembled a series of slides on the topic that is of interest to me right now. This is actually the original topic I provided to Lynn when she invited me way back. I don't even know, it was early in the beginning of the year, and the original date was supposed to be March 24th, and we all know what happened to that date. So the topic, I think, while not quite the same as when I thought about preparing it, I think it is no less important now than it was when I was imagining it in March. It's entitled Preparation for Work and Life, What Are College Students Experiencing Today? And certainly if I were to kind of constrain today to really today, it would be pretty different. And I just want to acknowledge our current circumstances and just remind everybody that what we need right now in COVID-19 is a lot of grace, I think, most of all. I think it really has tested our compassion and our grace. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that and give people space, compassion, and grace. And with that, I, of course, think that humor is also good. And as much as I am a lover of duct tape, I don't think it's appropriate for everything. So a little humor for the COVID-19, and I hope it's not too early for a little humor. But the other one that I think I've been seeing a lot of is what we're all wearing when we're working from home. And certainly, as Lynn introduced, I am a cat lover, so cat fur tends to be everywhere on me. So I'm sort of glad that we're not in person, so I don't have to worry about that in my appearance. But I do think that what we're seeing today is a far different scenario than what I imagined when I thought about the topic of this little talk. But no doubt, the COVID-19 has brought new emphasis on work and life and college students' preparation. And I want to just highlight that with some recent headlines. These come from a variety of different news sources and periodicals, but the new college grad job outlook is pretty bleak right now, as you might imagine. And that the anticipation for what college grads need to be able to do and be particularly adaptable is a really important point right now for any particularly college grads who are trying to hopefully go out and become a part of the workplace. The other thing, you know, anybody who's reading along, Wall Street Journal included, has noticed how much emphasis there's been on what students and what people who are trying to enter the job market can do right now. So I think this is apropos for the current period. And I even heard this morning on NPR that WFIU is offering, or is, I think it might actually be competing with this meeting right now, is a program on internships and the value and importance of internships at this point when so many have evaporated because they cannot be in person. So this move to virtual internships for students, both graduates of high school graduates and college, is a new way of doing things. So I think this real kind of concern for what's happening with graduates today, and this actually comes from a New York Times headline, "The Misfortune of Graduating in 2020." And the fact that we're conferring, in my case, I'm really interested in college and university graduates, 2 million bachelor's degrees this year. So 2 million prospective, I suppose, students out on the market. Many of them will go to graduate school. Some are just staying in the jobs they already have. But that's a lot of people newly entering job market. So I think this is a timely topic, and I want to I'll introduce you briefly. Lynn already provided a little bit of sense of what I work for, or who I work for and what I do, but I don't know if that's all entirely clear to most people. It's not clear to my own family most of the time. But just to give you a bit of my take on this, as Lynn said, I work in the School of Education, and I consider myself a higher education scholar. So I mostly study what goes on in colleges and universities. And the common terminology for studying what goes on is studies of teaching and learning, studies of college student development, and also in more contemporary parlance around estimating quality in higher education is called assessment. So the idea that somehow we would need to know how well colleges and universities are delivering on the promises and the claims that they make is particularly of interest to me. And I do that through a couple of different projects. The National Survey of Student Engagement that was introduced to you. It's a 20-year-old project. We're celebrating 20 years this year. And over the years that the survey has been in operation, we've surveyed 6.4 million students at 1,600 four-year colleges and universities across the country. That is a lot of surveying. That is what we do. We ask students questions about their experience in college. Lynn also mentioned I was part of a group that founded the National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment, and that's an effort that's a little more focused on making sure that colleges and universities are oriented around important and valued learning outcomes. The easiest way for me to think about this is a question that probably many of us have asked maybe our own high school students or graduates of college, kind of, what did you learn when you were in college? And for a lot of people, that's a tough question, not only because it's so, it's a huge question, but it's also a hard thing to articulate. So we want to make sure that colleges and universities are making good on the promises that students develop oral and written communication skills, critical thinking, analytical thinking, technology skills. We want to make sure that those outcomes are clear and that students can articulate what they've gained around those important measures. So that's what I spend a lot of time doing. And the other thing I try and do is help colleges and universities use the data that we collect and provide to them and that they collect on their own campuses to be smarter about delivering instructional practices and educational programs, and that they can be smarter about student learning and success. So that's what I try and help colleges and universities across the country do. And just to give you a little more nuance on our survey, it is an annual survey. We ask first-year students and seniors about their experiences, and we really focus on their behaviors, what they dedicate to things that we know are important for learning. And the interesting thing is that we were in the field when COVID-19 lockdown and sending students back home. Our survey was in the field, but amazingly enough, students still were willing to respond about their experience. And because our questions span the school year, were still appropriate. And we actually got students who were still responsive, even after they were abruptly removed from campuses and had to go home and resituate themselves completely. So that was actually a nice thing to see. Students were still willing to report out on their college experience. And I just put up a couple screenshots so you can kind of see what these very contemporary surveys that are all done on mobile devices look like for students. And the piece that's important to know about our project is, we use this information to help diagnose and help institutions improve the quality of the undergraduate experience. And these are different measures than asking students if they're satisfied or if they're happy, or to rely on what colleges, and you probably are all familiar with college rankings that US News and World Report popularized. That is based a lot on reputation, not so much actual behaviors and experiences that students have. So we really try and approach quality improvement from an experience base. So that's our take on this, and then we provide institutions with data and reports about what students describe and indicate, and then a lot of comparison information. So that's kind of the source of the information, but my interest is in how do we apply that to the current issues. So I spend a lot of time thinking about what are the 21st century student success goals. And it really is about more students completing college than ever before. And it's about assuring that they're ready for a 21st century workplace. And the most important phrase for me is that we know they're experiencing a high quality educational experience. So for me, that's the most important thing, is we have to be assured of the quality of it. And then I think the piece that I want to emphasize is how much data figures into knowing the answer to those questions. Is data have to be used to allow institutions to really create better experiences, effective interventions on campus to help more students be successful. And there's a lot of pressure on them to do that. And I'll tick off here a couple of the pressures in addition to the realities that we're currently operating under. Almost every college in the country is expected to increase college completion rates. It's not satisfactory to have, certain proportions of your population who you admit not complete, that we have to even accelerate time to degree. So can't let students kind of linger around and spend a lot of money and thereby increasing their debt load. So these are really critical issues right now that every college in the country is dealing with, and that amidst coronavirus and also some scrutiny and critique about the quality in general, that college costs too much, there's waning public confidence. Business leaders have gotten on board to identify that they're not sure students are always equipped with the right learning outcomes. I imagine this appeals, or at least resonates with some of you who are in business settings and you're looking for good qualified college graduates, and you want to make sure they come equipped with skills and experiences that are important to your workplace. So these are some of the critiques. I'm really, really pleased to hear your emphasis on diversity and the pledges that were just made. That was wonderful to hear. And I think that certainly follows what we're seeing in higher education, that there's a lot more attention to how do we assure a more welcoming, diverse environment for students in college? How do we make sure that students who have been historically underrepresented for whatever reason, there are a variety of reasons, get a chance and are given all the affordances to succeed? And then to be real about addressing equity gaps. When we see proportional differences among various student populations, we shouldn't just say, well, throw up our hands and say that's the best we can do. It isn't. We know that some places can't do better. They already are doing better. They've eliminated equity gaps in things like graduation rates and success rates and job placement and salary. So some other important things that they've eliminated. So this same equity question is one that's been a part of higher education for a long time. I'll just put up a statistic that troubles me quite a bit from a recent race and ethnicity in higher education report that came out just this past year. Actually, it was in the fall of last year. If we look at just all groups, all racial ethnic groups, and this is a generous college completion rate of 6 years. So we kind of think about a 4-year degree allegedly being 4 years. That's actually not the typical case. It takes students a little bit longer, but here we're being a little more generous and saying, okay, in 6 years, what's our completion rate? If we were doing this in a live audience, I would make you guess this. I'd love to involve my whatever audience I'm speaking to in actually offering their own estimation first. So I'm just going to have you keep it in your head. So take a guess at the proportion or percentage of students who, of all groups, a total here, complete in 6 years. I'll show you the answer so you've got your estimate. 64% complete a degree in 4 years, in 6 years. So that's our completion rate across all racial ethnic groups. But if we look closer to ask that equity question and we look at African American Black students' 6-year completion rate, okay, I'm going to guess that most of you might guess that it is lower than 64%, but how much lower? Well, it's the inverse, so 46%. So we have a pretty significant gap to make up on these important outcomes of college. But this is just an end outcome. It doesn't really tell us much about what the quality of students' experience or what students are really getting out of their college experience. So this idea of starting to track employability, that's a term I sort of like. So what are the employability skills that students develop when they're in college that implies that they're career ready? To me, this is a more important measure for students to be able to pull together. What are they learning? What skills, proficiencies, competencies are they developing? And can they name them, demonstrate them, articulate them to a degree to convince an employer that they have these skills? And then also to identify where they've had less experience or exposure. So this is pretty important. I think it's more important now, even with COVID-19, they really have to be able to do this. And just to give you some, something to hang on to, a lot of people describe these skills. In this case, this is one organization, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, a group that identifies career readiness competencies. And these are skills that I suspect most of us would agree, yeah, we want students to develop some leadership skills. We want them to develop a professional work ethic, maybe some teamwork. These are all things that probably all of us who hire college graduates or work with or have college graduates in our families want to make sure they know and can do. So these are important skills, and employers think these skills are pretty important. And in some surveys that have come out over the years about what employers think graduates should be able to demonstrate, here's a list again of about 15 proficiencies that employers think are pretty important these days. And again, if we were together in a room, I had a poll ready for you. And I was going to ask you, what's the #1 proficiency employers desire in graduates? So I don't know if anybody wants to really venture a big guess here and weigh in with their microphone. I'd accept a guess here if anybody wants to.
Self-motivated, proactive?
Okay, we'll take that guess. All right, so hang on to your favorite here. I'm going to show some results. Let's see how you do. It's actually the able to effectively communicate orally as the top, but if you'll notice, for any of you who are really paying attention to the actual percentage results here, they're all at the top. So employers want students to have all of these skills. What's at the very top are all of these items. Now, it was sort of a trick question. I originally, the original survey asked 15 items. Even those that are in the lower half of the 15, so if we look at the bottom 6 or 8, those are still pretty high. They're still in the 60% range of what employers really want. So there are pretty big learning priorities that executives and hiring managers value across all majors. This is true. So colleges and universities are appropriately focusing on these kind of employability skills. And we need to make sure that we're providing students experiences that help them learn these skills. It's not just about saying that you have them, you have to be able to show where you learn them. So it takes a lot. How well do we know that graduates are contributing? I'm going to pick one topic here, solving complex problems. To me, this is key right now. This is if COVID-19 doesn't demonstrate to us that we need people who can solve complex problems, I don't know what will. So we really do need graduates who are able to solve complex problems in a market that's open and unscripted, that the right answer is hard to determine. We need students who can do this. And I'll give you a true false here. This comes from our survey data. We asked students about the extent to which they have had experiences or feel their institution has contributed to their problem-solving skills. And true false here, again, if we were live, I would ask you to weigh in on this one. But here's our question, our true false. About 75% of seniors report that their institution has substantially, this combination of very much and quite a bit, contributed to their knowledge, skills, and personal development in solving complex real-world problems. All right, I'll let you guess true or false. Okay, yes, I see Lynn's downward thumb. Yes, it is false. It's actually less, about only 64%. So even seniors aren't giving themselves a lot of credit for solving complex problems. We need more students to get practice in solving complex problems to be able to take ill-structured, wicked problems and figure out how do we resolve this. What helps the students do this? How do they gain these problem-solving skills? You know, there are lots of ways I think we're seeing instructional practices take this up as a real challenge. You know, more applied experiences, complicated case studies, leadership outside the classroom where students actually have to figure it out for themselves and work with their peers to lead an effort. Working with real clients and businesses in our community, that's critical. It also helps when students can develop their own problems to explore. If they're invested in resolving a problem or issue versus one that was in a cookbook or a textbook or that was issued by the professor is less interesting. How do we help them develop a problem to study? The other thing we found a lot of promise in is what we call intensive experiential learning, where students are put into the context and they really have to work intensively to figure out, how do I work with this? How do I get us out of this problem? How do I address this community need? That those are some of the best ways for students to gain problem-solving skills. And I'll show you now a little bit about one of the most promising approaches that we've found through our survey project, is through asking students, that 6.4 million students that we've been asking all these years, well, how did they develop these problem-solving skills? How did they develop the critical thinking skills necessary? And we identified a set of what have become known as high-impact practices, HIPs for short, that are well-researched, engaging pedagogies that contribute to student learning and success, particularly around these real employability concepts. And I'll give you a little bit more sense of what these are. What they're called in colleges and universities. You've probably had them or experienced them yourself. Again, if we were live in a group, I would ask you about the significant experiences that you've had that are identified as high impact. I suspect many of you have done, if you were a college graduate, did a undergraduate research project, or maybe you did a study abroad or a service learning experience, some community-based research that was a real applied experience. Maybe you did an internship. Maybe you did a senior project that required you to bring all your knowledge together and make a public presentation, or to solve a community problem. I think about Harmony School as being a real example of what they put their students into, these intensive experiences. So these are the kinds of things that we know make a difference for students. If you have a college graduate or a grandson or daughter or a student who ask if they've had one of these experiences in college, they're meaningful, they're really important, but we know not everybody gets to do them. I'm going to show you a couple of statistics that show what proportions of students get to do these kind of high impact practices. In this case, about 62% of seniors report that they've done some sort of service learning course or experience in their time. That's actually pretty good. I think we definitely have seen some increases over the last 10 or 15 years in the number of students who are willing to go out in the community and do the work. The other thing that we're seeing a lot more students doing is internships, although not nearly as much as the service learning or community-based projects. So internships, about 52% of seniors across all institutional types get to do internships. Not so much with undergraduate research. So only about, really less than a quarter, just under a quarter of students are doing some sort of research project that demands their intense interest, and they get to work with a faculty member together to study that problem. And when we kind of add these all up, we've been doing some summing of these experiences. We see about 3 and 5 first-year students get to do this experience, and about 5 and 8 get to do at least, in this case, 2 or more of these kinds of experiences over the span of their college career. So it's not like we've got everybody doing 3 or 4 of these, but at least they're touching a majority of students. So those are good indicators, I suppose. And again, employers have really endorsed these skills. So not only are employers pretty clear about the kind of outcomes they want to make sure students develop, they're also getting pretty specific about the kinds of experiences they want students to have. So number 1 on this list is internships, weighing in pretty high. Actually, at the 93% of employers say we are much more likely to hire employees who have had an internship or an apprentice with a company or an organization, that they want students who have had multiple courses that demand significant writing. They want students to do research, and you can kind of see the list here that goes down, but they're demanding a lot of these experiences. So students are better off when they have these. I'm going to walk through one of them quickly just to give you a better flavor. Internships, because it's the topic of a lot of conversations today with COVID-19. What's happening with internships? How are students going to do internships? A lot have become virtual. We know that when seniors, students who do internships or field experiences, they score much higher in terms of gains in job and work-related knowledge and skills than their counterparts who didn't have an internship. And they also just believe they've developed a sense of competence. So these are important things for students to feel competent in their work. But again, not all students get to do this. We're only at 52% across all institutions. So there's more capacity for internships. However, the demand is higher than supply. Right now, I said 52% get to do internships. When incoming students are asked, do you want to do this? The demand is much higher. About 75% of students say, yeah, I really want to do an internship or some sort of cooperative, field-based experience. So we have a higher demand than supply. So for all of you who have an opportunity out there, think about bringing some students in to do internships and how you might do that. We also have some gaps. Mentioned equity earlier. Students who are the first in their family, also known as first-generation students, are less likely to do a couple of things on that high impact practice list, internships and research with faculty. In fact, these are statistically significant differences. First, if you're the first in your family to go to college, you're much less likely to do an internship or do research with faculty. There are lots of explanations for this, one being you just don't have a role model, somebody who thinks you should do that or is out there nudging you all the time to do that. Your family might not know it's important to do these things. We also find some racial ethnic inequities. I'll just highlight one. African American students significantly less likely to do an internship. Again, this could be part of the intersection of first generation, income, and race. So again, we need to think about equity. And I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about equity and diversity in your work. So these things concern me. We want to make sure that we open up high impact practices for all students. So I know I have surpassed my time, but I want to make sure that this message about opening up experiences for all students is out there. One, because I think it's of such value. College and universities need to do more, but it also is incumbent on the community supporting college students. So I really value all of you who are in different roles in our community who can try and involve students and make these high impact practices available for everyone. So I'll stop there and thank you for your time and attention to what I think is a really important issue, always and today. So thanks, everybody.
Great.
Thank you, Jillian. Excellent presentation. You know, our hearts are all in that field and with you. I have a question. We'll take a couple of questions. I've been really interested in pushing the idea of transdisciplinarity, that a lot of the experiences that you're talking about as giving value to students are really engaged with cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary perspectives, design thinking, systems thinking. how do we get that in there? I know a lot of faculty are often not so interested in pushing those linkages, but others are tremendously involved.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the more we can help students integrate ideas across fields, the better they're going to be at solving those wicked unscripted problems. But you're right, there are barriers. I mean, the fact that we've created academic disciplines and silos in the academy is one barrier to that, and that we have not created some affordances for team teaching or structuring assignments around a problem. So if you give students a problem and then say, what disciplines can you apply and perspectives can you apply to this problem, it creates a very different learning experience. So I agree with you. I think the more we can get people out of the confines of their own disciplinary perspective, both faculty and students, the better we'll be at creating these responses and answers to really difficult problems.
I have a
Jim
question.
Sims.
Thank you. I'm unmuted. Yes. Thanks, Jillian, for the presentation. I always find you interesting. But I was a first generation student, and ultimately I worked at Indiana University, and we did a lot of work with the National Survey for Student Engagement when I was in facilities in residential and RPS, Residence Program Services. That 46% graduation rate in 6 years for Black students, that interested me as, as usual, I think, or as normal. But at any rate, I became a non-traditional student, had to drop out, and eventually came back and got a degree. And everyone in my family has gotten a degree. But I always thought, in my issue, it was socioeconomic back when I first came. And then I learned that there were some inner city school issues or more lower socioeconomic or poverty-based, so they just basically weren't prepared for college. But I say all that to say this. One of the things is we wanted to do, or you're working on, is eliminate equity gaps. I guess my question is, how do we propose to do that when we have such equity gaps in society, in our country? So how does one fit with the other?
Yeah, you're right, Jim. I mean, it's not an easy problem to solve, and within the academy alone. It has to be societally. And so again, I appreciate the attention you're drawing to the diversity issue. The equity challenges are pretty serious in college. So if I think about those within the confines of the academy, a place where we can start to address some of them is, one, we need to pay attention to the data. So we need to be monitoring the data to know where the gaps exist. The second is to really think about what are the barriers and to be a lot more intentional about trying to address even the most simple ones. Money is certainly a real issue. A lot of reasons students don't do internships is because they can't afford to if they're unpaid. So how do we help students get past that barrier of imagining, well, that's something I can never do because I can't take an unpaid spot? Well, how do we create not only paid experiences, but perhaps some internship-like experiences that don't require students to give up a job that they have, but allows for a shorter, more intensive experience, but doesn't demand that they stop working at their paid job. So I think there are ways to rethink some of these things, but you're absolutely right. The barriers that exist particularly for historically underrepresented students present way beyond and before they enter a college or university. So it does require more systemic addressing in our community.
Thank you, Jillian. I'm going to have to move on. Sorry, Dave and others who had questions. But that was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now Ashley Sullivan, our president-elect, is going to tell us about next week's program.
Yep, next week, June 2nd on Zoom, our program will be Christine Popp, an immigration attorney speaking on immigration issues, introduced by Owen Johnson. Looking forward to it.
Great. And now I'd like to close the actual program part of the meeting with the four-way test, and then move into the business meeting. So here we go. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it be goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, moving into the business meeting part, we're going to, well, Kyla Cox-Deckard is going to present the board's plan for a sustainable club future. I want to thank Kyla for being so involved and such a leader in this area. I went to Sarah Laughlin to get some initial, work done and figure this all out. And Sarah was just incredibly helpful in this process. And, also Ashley was involved, and Natalie, provided so much of the information. So Kyla, thank you very much, and take it away.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present, Aaron. And I also would like to extend my thanks to the smaller committee, you, Sarah Laughlin, Ashley Sullivan, and Natalie for helping us to navigate the initial components of the proposal, and then the board for their attention to it last week during our meeting. This is not a completely new conversation. I think that our club has been talking about ways to create a more fair and sustainable approach to our dues structure for a long time. Obviously, the pandemic crisis has magnified some of the issues that we have with our current dues structure. And so it seemed very prudent and very much needed at this time to take a closer look at the dues structure and come up with a fair and sustainable approach for moving forward on that issue. So as I mentioned, we have a current situation that demands attention, a changing world and a need for financial stability for the club. The current billing structure, the committee and several other advisors have found relies too heavily on what I will refer to as lunch income, even in normal times. So for those of you who might not be as acutely aware of the way that the income is structured, for those of us who are in regular membership status, we pay for meals whether we consume them or not. We pay for the meals that are consumed, which means that the remaining funds from those meals that are not consumed then is used to cover our expenses as a club. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward, but that's essentially the funding mechanism for club operational expenses, as well as many of our service initiatives that our club covers. Currently, in-person celebrations of service are disrupted, so that, as you all know, has changed our billing structure and our meals structure such that it has dramatically impacted that income. Members need more flexibility for attendance. We certainly have members who are on what we call attendance waived status. We have many members who have shared that need for more flexibility for attendance in general. Also thinking about our current situation, when we do resume in-person meetings, we may have several members who do not feel comfortable joining us in person for lots of different reasons, health reasons and otherwise. And so giving more flexibility to that attendance. And then the club needs a sustainable financial model for continued growth and service. So just the simple act of budgeting for future years can be very complicated when you're relying on something that is ever changing as whether someone shows up to eat their lunch or not. So some of the considerations that the committee and the board in subsequent conversations have been discussing is offering that flexibility as we navigate future in-person meetings so that people can make their own decisions as to whether they are joining us for lunch in person or joining us in a virtual manner. Alleviating the reliance on uneaten lunches to support club operations, creating a fair dues structure that is more transparent. I'm sure, you know, as treasurer, I still find myself asking some questions about our dues structure. So if I'm asking questions, my suspicion is that many of us in the membership don't have a full understanding of exactly the way the dues are structured. And so this is an opportunity for us to bring clarity to that. And then, of course, funding club operations, which supports the costs of our club assistant, scholarships, youth activities, and other routine expenses that the club has in our efforts to serve the community. So the proposal, this is a look at the annual costs related to the proposal that we are considering. This shows that there's no change currently in the Rotary International dues and the Rotary District dues. Those are dues that we as members have always paid, and they are adjusted from time to time based on Rotary International and the district's decisions. But that is not changing during this proposal. The main two items that are changing are the club dues under this proposal, and then also the meals and the way that they are billed. So currently, as members, we cover $103 for dues for the club. The proposal is to shift that cost to $280, while then also removing the prepaid meals component so that members are billed for meals that they actually have eaten, that they're actually joining us for and consuming. So you can see in this chart that changes. It's a little under $650 that a member would typically experience in billing for those prepaid meals. And so this shows that would increase the annual dues $177. And then, of course, all of us have different designations that we've offered, and those would remain in place as we have designated them. A quick look at the quarterly cost, which I know that I tend to be more focused on quarterly costs because that's how we're paying our invoices. This shows the breakdown in the quarterly fees for dues, as well as, of course, the lunches, which again are currently billed at $13 each. So this would show a quarterly increase of $44.25. And that increases from $25 and it's increased $44.25, which is over the $25.75 that we currently pay quarterly. So the benefits of this proposal is that we are able to more fairly bill members for their meal costs. So you would be billed for what you actually consumed, not paying for lunches that you weren't able to join us for and eat, while also sharing the expenses of the club more equitably. We will offer more flexibility to members to make the best decision for themselves about in-person attendance, whether that might be work obligations or public health considerations or other considerations that members are having to make over time. Resolving a longstanding weakness in the club's financial structure, as I mentioned before, and balancing the budget and preventing what would amount to be an $8,700 shortfall in our budget. That could actually be more dramatic because that is based on meals continuing as they are and us having income from uneaten lunches, if you will, if we were to maintain the old structure of that. So the impact on you, as a regular member, you'll actually see a decrease in billing because of that lack of lunch costs. So that changes that dynamic. I do want to take the moment to thank everyone who generously gave some additional contributions during this quarter, because of course the pandemic would have dramatically and negatively impacted our ability to continue our services if we hadn't received those contributions. So I thank you for that. But you would see, of course, the offset of meal cost during this time. And then you'll see, as we mentioned before, what the change will be here for in-person meetings, that there would be that increase for your quarterly billing to distribute the overall change in the dues structure. So next steps, as I mentioned, this is something that the board reviewed last week. We are all now as a board coming to you for your questions and your comments. We will have an open period of questions and comments for the next week. That's through June 2nd. Once we have a final and approved plan by the board, we will implement that for the July 1st billing. And then we anticipate lots of opportunities for ongoing improvements and considerations. And of course, this being a very uncertain time, things will evolve and change as we're able to get back together. We're hoping to find some new opportunities for incentives, for attendance, and new ways to address the needs of our various membership demographics. So that is certainly open for continued evaluation and input as we go.
Thank you, Kyla. I do want to reinforce that this was a team effort, and the board is on board. And what we wanted to do is make sure that we presented this to the club as a whole before getting into all the details, because we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and we can all move forward well together. I also want to thank Lauren Snyder, Jim Bright, Sally Gaskell, and others for participating in this. And we had a great and very in-depth discussion on Thursday, last Thursday at the board meeting. That was memorable. It was a great meeting. So, questions?
Aaron?
Okay.
Say Kate?
Aaron, this is Kate. Yeah, I've just got the question screen on my screen now, so that's all I can see. I'm just interested in the relationship between Rotary and, for instance, the union and the arrangements made there. I've been curious for a long time about how they estimate how much food should be available, because we really have, I don't think we've had any way of knowing who is going to show up. So I'm just curious about how that would play into this, whether there are any constraints there. Otherwise, this looks like it's really going a good direction, but I was just wondering about the constraints in the relationship with the union.
Well, everything is changing. They're in an entirely different evolving situation. We do know that it's very likely that meal costs will go up substantially, partly because buffets are going to be a no-no probably. So that's going to really change things. We don't know when the IMU is going to reopen and for what purposes. And so, yeah, there's just so much that's unknown. In the past, the IMU has not required us to have a minimum. So we're only paying the meal costs for those who attend, for those who have the meal. And so,
Aaron, I might add that I think her question is, how do they know how many of us ate? Is that your question, Kate?
No, Aaron has answered the question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, they, when we sign in, that creates the count, and Natalie gives that sign-in count to the union and then they bill us for that amount, and they bill us $13. So it's money in, money out.
But nothing in advance. I guess from what Aaron is saying, it sounds like we might be getting into a situation where we would need to make a commitment to come. I mean, we would make it known in advance that we're going to plan to attend the meeting. Is that right?
No.
No, I mean, we don't know what they're going to need. You know, whether they will need us to guarantee some minimum number, I don't know. But we'll be talking to Matt Tomrell, who's the head of catering, and Hank Walter, who's, you know, director of the IMU. So, and I know they're going to want, they're having a very strange experience themselves, you know, having to figure everything out. And I believe that June 1st, coming up, the university is probably going to be announcing some of its plans for students. And so that'll start to see things hashing out in terms of the plan for the
I think Hank has a comment here.
Do you want me to address that as much as I can?
Please.
Right now, as you may have read in the paper or seen emails from President McRobbie, there's this whole process going on at the university about reviewing the current situation and what are we going to do from the fall. We expect the next series of recommendations to be released maybe as soon as tomorrow. The goal was definitely to have it out by June 1st because that's the deposit deadline for incoming students, so that they would know what the situation will be for them when they come to campus in the fall. That will tell us a lot. That will tell us a lot about how we can handle meals and events. Right now, the provost has already declared there will be no events on campus through the end of July. And so summer orientation and all those kinds of things are happening remotely on Zoom as well. We'll know more hopefully by the end of the week, and then try to be able to figure out what does that mean for meal service? What does that mean for meetings? What does that mean for capacity of rooms? If you're doing social distancing, all that is still very much up in the air, and we're waiting on these reports and recommendations to come out. So soon, we'll know more soon, but not today.
I have a question.
Thank you, Hank. Charlotte.
Yeah, I know Kyla was very clear, I'm sure, but I would like to know what the bottom line is on all this. I understand. I don't understand now. If I get a bill, what will the difference be? Most likely, typical bill.
Well, Kyla, would you like to? I don't know if we could pull up the slide again.
Sure. Yeah. Let me go ahead and see if I can get back to that one. Just one second. Quick. Let's see here. Just 1 second. I can get my controls. Okay, so this is the quarterly breakdown. Basically, you'll see an increase on your club, your Bloomington Rotary Club dues by $44.25 from what you're currently paying. And down here in the lower right grid, we have it broken down by based on perfect attendance plus the dues that will be billed for that total, plus any elective designations. And, you know, all of our invoices vary wildly. When we were having this conversation, it does reveal how difficult it is for us to just have, a flat figure that we can put out there. So I tried to make this as clear as possible, knowing that everyone has, different elective options on their invoice as well. So it may fluctuate.
Okay, thank you.
But if you go through the
out on paper, right?
Right, we're going to send this out. But if someone has perfect, it comes to every single meal, we still don't know what the cost of the meals will be moving forward.
I understand that. That I understand.
Okay. Anything else? And since I can't see everyone, Kyla, is there anything that you'd like to add to wrap
I think
up?
Liz Feidel wants to say something.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yes,
see.
Liz Feidel does. So Liz Feidel's interested in whether or not the club will vote on this, or will it's just being presented and will just be expected that it's going to happen.
The board of directors is completely authorized and has the responsibility for setting dues.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to have feedback to understand what concerns there are among the members, and we'll definitely consider that. So you're encouraged to send in the feedback to the club. We'll send out a P-mail or another survey form. But no, it's not about a vote. It's about considering all the different opinions that get expressed.
Oh, you'll send out a survey and we can all give feedback that way, is that correct?
So it'll be a survey, right, an opportunity to comment rather than a vote.
Okay, that sounds good.
That was an important question, so thank you for persisting in that.
I think that Ron, yeah.
I just
Ron
want to
Barnes.
applaud Kyla and her committee because I think they've done outstanding work. We heard a presentation today about creative leadership and thinking through problems, and we had a serious problem as a club, and this is a very creative way to bring equity to our billing structure. I think it's a job well done. I thank them.
Well, thank you. Is there, we've run long, but I'd like to give anyone an opportunity.
So one more
has
question.
An important.
One more question. So will the new, let's say that it goes in just as proposed and everybody's hunky-dory. Let's say that all happens. So then will the new plan be reevaluated based on how it plays out? Or is there a time limit to maybe think about reevaluating it maybe in 6 months or a year or something like that? Because I mean, it's so different.
Right. The new plan is not cast in stone. It's not going to be cast in stone. Okay. So it's not full. There are a lot of details that haven't been determined yet, but we wanted to put this out there for everyone to know about and to be able to comment. And then if we all move forward, it'll be together, knowing that there are going to be changes and developments, in the future.
Cool. Yeah, I'd like to have something where we'd reevaluate it in a certain amount of time.
I'd like to just add to that in what we discovered in the bylaws when we were looking to see, is this a membership vote or is this a board obligation, or are the dues embedded in somewhere that we, formal, or we discovered that what the bylaws say is that the board sets the dues and reviews them every year. Okay. And I think we haven't been doing that, which is why we're, we've just kind of rolled forward the model we had, and it was so complicated based on the lunch money, and there's so much money flowing through the account that everything looks fine. There's a cash balance, but that's really just because we haven't paid for lunch yet. Mm-hmm. And so when we really started digging into it in terms of, how much does it cost us for lunch and how much does it cost us for our club assistant and our scholarships and our RILA expenses and all the other things that we want to do out of the club budget, that we have been running in the red really for quite a while. And then when lunch stopped all of a sudden and there's no money, there's no slush money slushing through there, it really became very obvious very quickly that this was an unsustainable setup. And so I really feel like this is something that people have been worrying about and stewing over and complaining about for years about. I don't like paying for the lunches I don't eat. And that's right. But most people didn't realize that the lunches they didn't eat were funding everything else that the club did. And so, even if you didn't show up for lunch, and even if you don't show up for lunch in the future every single week, there's still parking for you. There's still a program for you. There's still the club assistant sitting there waiting to help you and to conduct the business of the club. There's all this stuff that's still going on that really should be covered by the dues, not by lunch that you didn't eat. So this really we're just taking this insurmountable opportunity, right? I mean, we have to do it now because we are going to be bankrupt if we don't. but also it's been needed for a long time. And this is, it seems somewhat extreme, but I think it will be extreme if you are one of the few people, and Liz, you and I are probably in that category, who come almost every single week.
Yeah.
Those people will pay a little bit more. But if you miss a meeting or two every month, or on average, if you miss a meeting from time to time, I think your bill will not be very much different. So, you know, there are an awful lot of people in that category, and those people are currently covering the activities of the club. So it's much fairer, I think, to have the dues spread across the whole membership, and then have lunch be a separate issue, especially as we expect that some people with health conditions or, you know, vulnerabilities may be less comfortable coming to lunch for a while. And so we want to be able to continue the club and make sure we're there when things steady out again.
So
Thank you, Sarah. I think you speak for many there.
And then what about the offering for lunch itself? I mean, I understand there's a potential of no buffet, and so there was a lot of diversity on what you could pick from with the buffet, right? So how do we know what people may want? How many offerings might there be? I mean, what's that going to look like? Do we know?
That's just a whole different issue. We can't address that now. We have no idea, but we have to trust the union, I think, to figure out how that will work, because they're the food experts. They have to figure that out because it's their business. They know what we want.
Maybe we could hear from another past president. Joy or Mike Baker, are you around, or Joy? Joy?
Yeah, I was chuckling a little bit when Kyla, the treasurer, was saying there's been such a mysterious, to some degree, even when I was president, trying to wrap your head around how our financials and our financial system. And so I'm grateful that we are finally doing something that to me seems most appropriate as we go forward, and equitable, and so thought through by the leaders of our club I wholeheartedly endorse it and think it's what we need as a club.
Thank you. Glenda Murray?
I would just echo that. I remember I've never understood all the budget stuff and how it worked and how we could figure out exactly. This will make it so much better as an organization. And those of us who are not going to feel comfortable for coming for a while, we can at least pay our dues and be online and those kinds of things. I think this is a great step forward for the organization, and I hope for the individual members will feel that too as they think about it.
And Jim Bright, wanted to get your input.
I would just say that other clubs of our generation, if you will, around the 100-year mark, we're 102 years old, and of our size are also dealing with this right now. I want to second what Ron Barnes said about Kyla and Sarah and the committee. I think there's been a lot of good thought that's gone into this. I remember presidents who came before me trying to tell me about how this was set up, and they were saying, we don't like it. It's there's something wrong with it, but it's very hard to unwind, and so you just have to go along with it. And you know, I mean, it goes back to the four-way test. You know, is it fair to all concerned? And right now, it isn't. You know, those who aren't able to come every week are paying for our wide range of charitable activities, and it's not fair. This will make it right, in my opinion.
Lance, thank you, Jim. Lance Eberly is our district membership chair and the past governor and future district governor. Any thoughts, Lance?
I look at it from several different angles. And again, I concur with everybody and what they said in the hard work that the committee put together on this. This has been a long-standing problem for quite some time. From a club perspective, I remember even being treasurer and president, you didn't want your attendance to get too strong because it actually took away because you had to pay meal costs. So this actually spreads it out a little bit and makes a lot more sense in that way. I also feel it provides, we just talked a lot about diversity and stuff in our membership here at the beginning of the meeting. And I think this does open it up for the club to become a lot more diverse because our meal cost is the big expense. And so it does give options for people to come and be a part of the meeting. Maybe they don't want to take a meal, things of that nature, be a part of it. So this is really the direction a lot of Rotary clubs are going now. I know the old school was, you pay for your meals regardless of whether you're there or not. But many clubs are starting to get away from that as, not only a way to address budgetary concerns, but also as membership recruitment. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Thank you. And Charlotte had a comment? Unmute, Charlotte.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to suggest that this goes way back to when Rotary was more exclusive in its membership in terms of socioeconomic groups, that people didn't worry about the cost of meals perhaps so much in the past, and that's changing as we become more democratic in our membership. I'm just suggesting that there's a historical reason for all this, is that it didn't matter at one point and now it does.
Very good. Now, Ashley, as president-elect, I just want to give you a moment here also.
I don't think I can really add anything else to this conversation. I'm totally on board with making this change. I think it certainly opens opportunities for us that we're looking into the 2020-2021 year to make a new face for our club and expand some things and change some things. So I'm, for one, am really excited to see where this puts us, to have a Zoom component even when we do get back together, to give people some more flexibility and to encourage people to come to every single meeting in some way. And so I'm just really looking forward to this and really applaud all the work that went into it as well. And definitely open to any comments, further comments after this. You can email me, you can email Aaron, Kyla, anyone on the board. Please voice your concerns. You will get that survey that'll have a comment box, but if you want to talk to one of us privately, we would welcome that and encourage it.
Okay. Hank, do you have any final sense?
Speaking on behalf of the union, we're really looking forward to having more clarity and being able to provide the club more clarity on all of this. And obviously we'll continue to want to try to make this work for the club as well as for the union. Other than that, personally, I'm in support of it.
Okay.
But isn't it, is this not a possibility? Excuse me, I love the union, but is not this a possibility to look around and see what our options are?
Well, that's always a possibility, but we're, we love the union. That's very convenient for many of our members, and have a tremendous history there. So we're not taking that relationship at all lightly or for granted. We'll work with Hank and Matt to make something happen if we can. And yes, we'll consider anything else that's needed. Okay, this is amazing. You guys have stayed way past. It is such an honor to be involved with this club. I thank you. It's amazing. Oh, Bill, did you want to? Okay, he was turning off the computer. Bill Murphy. So, yes, so thank you. I do have a closing quote, thought of the week. And it's from C. Joy Bell C. I don't know if anyone's familiar with her. Author, essayist, and philosophy. You will find that it is necessary to let things go, simply for the reason that they are heavy.
Yes, good point.
Excellent.
So thank you, and I'll ring the chime again, and I love you. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kyla, everybody.
Thanks
Thanks,
again,
everyone.
Eileen. Yes.
Yeah,
Everyone be safe and take care.
great conversation.
Wonderful.
Take care, everybody. I'll go ahead and switch off the meeting. Have a good week. Have a safe week, and we'll see you again, hopefully on Thursday, right?
Thank you.
Right. Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Natalie.